Um, look at a number of places last night, including Blackpool, which is obviously a focus for me, being in the northwest.
Liverpool, Portsmouth, Nottingham. It was all over.
I mean, it's got to be a worry. Whatever your views, it's got to be a worry. Let's talk to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley. Morning to you, Peter. I mean, whatever the rights and wrongs of people who have legitimate concerns, when stuff ends up in the way it has been, I mean, it's got to be a concern. I mean, even just how do you possibly even attempt to police all this sort of stuff and run it through the courts as well?
As you quite clearly state, and very eloquently, Stephen, no matter what somebody's concerns are, if you pick up a brick or you pick up a bottle and you throw it at a police officer, you are an idiot. End of story. And unfortunately, we face yet another evening of violence when more police officers were injured. Something quite dramatic is going to have to happen here, because I see no sign at the moment of this unrest diminishing. In fact, I see it escalating and spreading. That does, of course, concern me, that if it goes beyond the capabilities of the police, will we have to be faced with the very unfortunate sight of troops on the streets of mainland Britain?
Yes, that has been mentioned already, that possibly we could bring the army in. My goodness, I don't suppose anyone really wants to see that. But what else is going to quell this trouble? Yvette Cooper, the new Home Secretary, has said that anyone rioting in this aggressive way will feel the full force of the law. But what does that really mean?
It means that as soon as the police can gather evidence against people, they will knock on their front doors and they will arrest them, charge them and put them in front of a court. But the whole criminal justice system is in absolute crisis. The Labour Party, one of the first things they announced after being elected into government was that they were going to let thousands of people out of prison because there's no spaces. So are those thousands that are going to be released merely be replaced by people who have thrown bricks and bottles at the police? We shall have to wait and see. But essentially, this stems from the politicians. The politicians bear a huge amount of responsibility for getting the nation into this point where so many people feel frustrated, and I'm not condoning this in any way, shape or form, let me make that clear, but so many people get frustrated about the state of the country, about the rise of Islam, about unfettered immigration, that they go out onto the streets and create such mayhem.
Well, so many people will agree with you, Peter, and say, you know, obviously, and as you put it, you cannot condone violence, and you especially cannot condone violence against police officers who are just trying to do their job. However, what we are seeing from politicians is just this move to quash what we're seeing now, but there is still no jaw on the other issues. And you can't do one without the other, can you?
And you can bring the army onto the streets, you can bring every police officer in the land onto the streets, you can put down the unrest, but the disquiet will not go away. And as long as politicians take a very broad brush and say that anybody who has concerns about the rise of Islam in the UK and unfettered immigration, as long as all those people are called far right, when of course many of them are moderate, mainstream, working hard, raising lovely kids, contributing to society, but just have concerns, as long as that conversation is shut down, this unrest will never go away.
Can I just ask you one thing about police tactics? Now that Yvette Cooper has said, you know, the full force of the law will be used. If this was happening in America, the police would be armed and they'd be shooting by now, wouldn't they? If this was happening in Paris or elsewhere in France, they would have the water cannon out. What can our police do more than just standing behind riot shields? Isn't there something more proactive they could be doing?
You're absolutely right, Anne. In other countries, by now you would have seen water cannon, rubber bullets, CS gas, and other kinds of tactics. none of which we've seen over the last week or so. Yes, certain police forces are equipped with CS gas, for example, and what are called baton rounds or rubber bullets, but that would be such a huge decision that would have to be made at such a very senior level that it would open a can of worms that quite simply would probably never be closed again.
Yeah. OK, Peter, as always, it's really good to get your perspective. Thank you.
I can see people at home thinking, typing now, saying, but, maybe that's what's needed. Extreme measures taken, decisions on that taken at the very top senior level. Isn't that what Yvette Cooper meant?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, I have to say, I'm with Peter on this. I think it would open up a can of worms, and I think it would
shut down the riots, wouldn't it?
Well, yes, it would. But then, if you shut down the riots, and I know the riots are the bad part of this, and I'm not trying to say anything else. I think it's despicable. However, if you try to shut down all of this with force, without talking about the fact that so many people are frustrated, then you just make it worse.
No, I'm totally with you. The two things have to go together.
Yeah, because you'll end up, those moderate people will end up becoming frustrated enough to take action. Let's get Parliament back, for heaven's sake. This needs to be discussed so that we can report on what politicians are saying about this.
And politicians discussing this may have some very good ideas and at least they should be reflecting the fears and the issues that concern their constituents. Isn't that their job?
There's too many people, and it's down to this racism line where people are frightened to say things because they're not racist and they don't want to appear racist. But if there are too many people who say, and some of you message in and say, well, my entire community seems to have just changed over the past few years. But that's a legitimate concern. Yes, you've got to address it with a degree of calm. You've not got to get hysterical about it. The world changes, the country changes. However, if your community is changing that much and you're worried about it, you should be able to voice that, and someone should listen to you and give you some answers.
I keep going back to this piece in the Times. It's really good, this front page piece in the Times. Talking about the rioting that was going on in Liverpool, others in the crowd who were not part of any violence insisted they were not racist. Quotes, "This is not just about Southport. This feeling has been going on for years," said Dave Jones, 62, a self-employed gardener. He said, "I'm from Holyhead, and 7 out of 8 corner shops are now owned by Muslims. I am from a town of 11,000, and I'm not racist at all, but there are a lot of them now, and people are peed off with it." Ordinary person in the crowd.
Yeah, well, and that's...
who maybe feels that his issues aren't being addressed.
Well, this is the point. This is a democracy, and so people should be heard. And then, the government needs to act on it. And if they don't act, well, that's when you vote for somebody else.
OK, can I just... just one more. John Crook, 62, a plasterer, had travelled from Bradford to Liverpool for the rally. He believes the government is not listening to people like him who are not racist or far right, but have concerns about immigration.
Well, I think that's valid, isn't it? I think that's valid. And I know we've talked about it a lot this morning, as our producer's telling us, but this is important. And these are the voices that need to be heard.